Hello and welcome to the Mining Show, brought to you by Blytheway on Core London. I'm Charlie Gibson. Now, as we all know, the share prices of mining companies can be quite sensitive to, among other things, milestones. And one such company, which we think is hitting just such a milestone, is Georgian Mining. And joining me now is their Chief Executive, Mike Struthers. Mike, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. You put an RNS out yesterday saying you'd met with the Minister for the Economy and the Environment?
Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development.
Okay, yeah. So close-ish. And go on, tell us the substance of that meeting.
Well, as you can imagine, we've been trying to arrange a meeting with the Minister for some time. He, as I've indicated though recently, he's only just got into his role, full-time. It's only a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I was very pleased to get the chance to finally meet him last Friday. And we had almost an hour and a half together on Friday evening. It was very good.
And can you tell us what you discussed?
Absolutely. So I suppose aside from just introducing the company, obviously we wanted to discuss our pending application for this permit approval. So after introductions and what was the formation of the JV, how did it all start, I spent quite a bit of time explaining the work that we'd been doing up to that point. I mean, the JV started in 2015, so quite a lot of work has been done. The discovery we had at KB East, so we covered a lot of that. He's quite interested, and he asked a lot of technical questions, although he's not a miner, of course.
Right.
And of course, the work program going forwards. What are we planning to do? We touched on other sort of broader topics like the role of junior companies in de-risking in new jurisdictions and obviously also the government's intentions to expand that sector. They've got some quite ambitious plans, so we got into that as well.
So he's a man who's much better informed now than he was before your meeting.
I hope so, yeah. And he comes from a commercial and business background. He had a long career with McKinsey's before this role, so he's well tuned to business.
You're waiting for approvals, mining approvals.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we think the status of those is?
Well,
how have they changed since your meeting?
Well, so the application that we have in is to extend the exploration permits. And although, and I recall the last time we chatted, although it's called exploration permits, it effectively is allowing us to do any drilling or any field work. So our more advanced project is going into infill programs and feasibility studies, in this next phase. But of course, we've also got other true exploration activity in the wider license area. Some of that is, verification of old historical data and target testing and things like that. So, but our core focus is obviously to advance this lead project, KB East, as we call it, and get that through to feasibility studies. So that's all part of the same program. But because it involves drilling and field work, then we need that permit extension.
So that means you can't do anything until you get the permit extension? Or?
Field work, right? So
you're restricted on field work?
Yes, yeah. Any field activities. The team over there has continued to be very busy. We put an RNS out a while ago about the KB East project and what it was starting to look like. They've been doing a lot of pit optimizations and layouts of surface facilities and all those sorts of things. And that work is ongoing. That's still going really well. I'm very happy with that. So
do we have any indication as to when these approvals might come through, do you think?
Well, obviously it's out of my hands, so I can't give a date. But I certainly expressed the urgency from our point of view, and he certainly understood that to get this approval, completed and allow us to get moving. He certainly indicated that, there's a need to engage with the Prime Minister. There's some government, a step, if you like, as a part of the process. The Prime Minister is away this week, and he was looking at his diary when we were talking and say, well, he's away this week and I can't do anything, but he's back next week. So I know that the mining agency, which is a part of that ministry, with whom we interact the most, I know they've got a meeting with the Minister again early next week. So I'm optimistic we'll get some news very soon.
Is it just a case of they have a conversation, they both agree, great, tick, tick, here's your application?
Effectively, yes. The critical sort of approval we need is the Minister's endorsement of the application. And then there's a bureaucratic process that follows, which is that there's a government resolution that has to go to a couple of other departments. Finance, for example.
Do we know how long that takes? Or
That usually takes 10 days to 2 weeks to
Right.
complete the whole thing. But it's the Minister of Economy, his endorsement of the application, which is critical.
And that's who you met?
Yes,
Yes.
that's who we met. Yeah, and I must admit, it was a very positive conversation. He certainly appreciates the efforts that we've been putting into Georgia, and he knows we've made a good quality application. Of course, he's also new to the role, and he's new to the mining agency, who now report to him. So, he's still settling into that. But he's certainly got the message that, it's a critical time, a critical application for us to allow us to get moving. And as I say, without giving a date, he was clearly committed to trying to resolve this very soon for us.
So a best case scenario is you could get your approvals in about 4 weeks. That's
Full approval? Yes,
3-4 weeks would be the sort of,
Full approval, yeah. But I say the key milestone for us, and I'll when we get that, I will of course make an announcement as well. Is that his endorsement of the application is a critical part of that process. So, I'll advise our shareholders when we've got that.
And the feeling was from your meeting is that he looked favourably with that
very much so. Yeah,
on the
very much
application.
So. Yeah, and I've had some exchanges with him since by email, and that's all quite positive. Yeah.
If I were to look at it from the other perspective and say, look at the prospect that you're exploring on, and where you're and where you're applying for the extension,
Yep.
is there anything particularly environmentally sensitive about it? Any unusual tree frogs or?
No. We've been through all of that, and I mean, actually, last Friday I also had a meeting with the Deputy Minister of Environment, and that was a very positive meeting, and we had a lot of common ground, actually, a lot of discussion around responsible mining and those sorts of concepts, and the need to adhere or apply international standards and all that. So they're certainly moving. Legislation there is moving more towards European Union standards, and other international codes. So that was a very positive meeting as well. But no, for our activities, it's basically, as I say, exploration and study work. There are no environmental issues, and other lower level permits like forestry permits and what have you are fine. So,
is there any important seasonality? Once you get the approvals, can you go straight through into exploration, or are you about to be dumped on by 20 feet of snow?
No, actually, no. It's quite a how can I say, forgiving sort of climate. There can be issues around moving rigs around and things, but basically we don't get heavy snow. It gets cold, but not Siberian cold, so it's sort of around 0, -5, but not the -20s or something as aggressive as that. So no, it actually the season. So
you can drill all
the season
throughout
continues.
the winter.
We can go through winter, yeah, with only minor interference. So.
So what timelines are you looking at now? Do you think, if not so much the short-term ones, but the medium and the long-term ones? How do you get KB East, your lead project, from here to producing gold?
So as I say, we've got an agreed 6-month work program with our partners, and this is a 50-50 JV, and that will see us through to the feasibility study. Then obviously there's a go no go decision between the partners on that particular project. The initial focus of that is on the gold oxides, but there is a large copper gold sulfide body below. But that'll come along and behind. The development that requires more drilling, and that'll be a sort of progressive development. So the focus of the feasibility study is on the gold oxides, but taking account of the footprint of the sulfides and the future layout, so we don't do something silly like put a waste dump on an ore body or things like
Yes,
that.
something like. Well, you'll know where the ore body is. No, because as soon as you put your waste dump or your plant somewhere, that's almost certainly the best
focus
the best
for
part.
the exploration program. So.
Indeed, it is. So sorry. So the feasibility study in 6 months' time.
I think it'll drift slightly beyond that. Depends how the drilling goes, and what follows the drilling is metallurgical test work. We need to do more leach test work on the gold oxides, that sort of thing, and some more on the sulfides. So,
Middle of next year?
Yeah, well, obviously that depends when we start.
Yeah.
But I think the feasibility study, if we have a 6-month program now, it's probably going to drift to about 7 months or 8 months, because we've got a couple of months of drilling up front. It's a relatively short time for a feasibility study, of course, but the footprint and the layout at KB East is very simple. It's basically a pit and a couple of a waste dump and a low-grade stockpile and a road that connects to the partner's leaching facilities. So a very simple arrangement that side. We'll be doing an EIA in parallel with the feasibility study, of course. So you know, and they'll run together, and then we'll complete the EIA. We're not obliged to do that locally, but we'll do it anyway, of course.
So working on this sort of timeline, feasibility study, EIA, sort of roughly the middle of next year, give or take. We understand there's a bit of latitude.
Sure.
It's not entirely within your control. Final investment decision, assuming it's a positive study, final investment decision shortly thereafter.
Very shortly, yeah.
Finance shortly after that. Begin construction late next year, late 19?
I would hope to do it earlier than that, and the construction is very simple. As I say, it's just basically a road and a couple of dumps, so very simple facilities at the site. So I think, you know, if everything goes according to plan, then third quarter, I think we'd be engaged in this construction. Yeah.
1 year's construction time, 2 years, 1.5?
No,
Much
9
9 months.
Oh, no, much less than that. As I say, it's the building a road, which is only about 10 kilometres long, and a couple of dumps, so 6 months tops, probably a bit less.
6 months. So we could be looking at end of first quarter 2020 for first production?
Conceivably.
That sort of order of magnitude. Yeah.
That sort of order rather than, you know, 21 or 22 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a much simpler project.
One final question I must ask you. I read a very good book on the Great Game, which sort of drifted into the Caucasus.
Oh, yeah.
And it implied, or I think it stated actually, that it was a pretty complicated place to do business. Now, obviously, the sort of business they were talking about was diplomatic business 150 years ago. But so what I'd like to ask you is, how do you find doing business there?
It's actually very good. I think it's one of the better addresses in. If you look at the Tethyan Belt as a whole, obviously that crosses a lot of countries in that region. I think Georgia is one of the better addresses to have there. It's generally, you know, the government and the legislation is moving more towards international and European standards. Obviously, they have their eyes on Europe. You know, the support we get generally at government level is very good. The infrastructure and the facilities there are generally good. And I think, you know, confidence, security of tenure and those sorts of issues are in pretty good shape. So it's interesting. I mean, the government is clearly committed to expanding the sector. So one of the initiatives is there's a review of the mining code going on at the moment. It's being run by the EBRD. And I know that I think they're due to report by the end of the year. So that's the first step in trying to bring the mining code up to, you know, more common sort of international standards. And then there'll be the sort of legislative steps that follow next year. But they're following those sorts of initiatives. So they really want to, you know, attract additional. They want more foreign investment, and this minister in particular is certainly committed to expanding the mining sector. He wants that sector to grow, and there's a lot of potential in Georgia. So I think it's going to go very, very well.
Very importantly, I understand it's a rugby mad nation.
They really are.
There's a World Cup coming up next year, I think, isn't there?
Yes.
And you will be supporting. Just asking.
Well, I find myself in a difficult position there because I've got I hail from Scotland and the UK and Portugal, and now I'm working in Georgia. So
now you're going to have to be diplomatic.
I'm going to be torn.
Well, we wish you the best of luck with
Thank
that.
you very much.
Excellent.
Yeah,
all right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mike Struthers, the Chief Executive of Georgian Mining. If I look at my phone, as I say, they had the RNS out yesterday about that meeting they had with the minister. Their shares were bouncing yesterday. And as I say, according to my telephone, they've come off a low for the year of about 6p, and they're trading about 9p. So up 50% in a few days, as the Americans say. I'll let you do the math. I'm afraid that's all we got time for. From me, Charlie Gibson, on The Mining Show, brought to you by Blytheway on Core London. We'll be back in a week with more such opportunities. And until then, we wish you a very capital day.